Futoshi Matsunaga wasn't your typical serial killer. He wasn't hiding in alleys or stalking people in the dark. No, this guy did his evil in broad daylight, dressed like a businessman, and smiled like someone who'd ask you to join a pyramid scheme, except instead of selling vitamins, he sold suffering. He was born in 1961 in Japan, and even as a kid, people knew something was off. Teachers called him manipulative, classmates said he was charming, but strangely intense. And let's just say that when people describe you like that before puberty, it's not a great sign for your future moral development. By the 1980s, Matsunaga had perfected the art of deception. He had that kind of confidence that only sociopaths and cult leaders possess. The I could convince you that gravity is optional type of energy. He was intelligent, eloquent, and persuasive. But behind that calm exterior was a walking nightmare waiting to happen. He started small, conning classmates, cheating business partners, manipulating women. His weapon wasn't a knife, it was charisma. And in Japan, where politeness and trust are cultural cornerstones, that made him lethal. Then came Junko Ogata, a woman who had become both his accomplice and his victim. When she met him, she thought she had found love. He told her she was special, that only he truly understood her. Classic cult leader playbook. Page 1, sentence 1. Within months, he had her completely under his control, cutting her off from her family, her friends, and reality itself. By the late 1990s, Matsunaga wasn't just manipulating individuals anymore. He was running his own twisted miniature cult, a family unit of terrified followers who obeyed his every word. Here's where the story gets truly disturbing. Matsunaga used a mix of psychological abuse, starvation, and electric shocks to dominate people. He'd strip them of sleep, food, and dignity until their willpower evaporated. Then he'd rebuild their minds from the ground up, loyal only to him. He was a master puppeteer, pulling the strings of human emotion like it was an art form. But instead of painting with colours, he painted with pain. It started with small acts of control, forcing people to humiliate each other, to apologise endlessly, to confess to crimes they never committed. Then came the violence. He used electric shocks as punishment, attaching wires to victims' arms, legs, even tongues, and flipping the switch whenever he wanted to remind them who was in charge. People screamed, begged, and cried, and Matsunaga just smiled, calm, composed, almost entertained, as if he was watching a variety show. He eventually convinced Junko to help him lure more victims, friends, relatives, and even her own family members. They moved between apartments and hotels, each new location becoming a torture chamber disguised as a home. The scariest part, he didn't always kill them right away. He'd keep them alive for weeks, even months, turning families against each other in a sick psychological experiment. Under his influence, victims were forced to torture one another, parents hurting children, siblings turning on siblings, until reality itself dissolved into madness. By the late 1990s, Matsunaga and Ogata had claimed at least 7 lives, possibly more. Entire families disappeared and no one noticed. He was so good at manipulation that neighbours believed his victims were just moving away. He kept their bodies hidden in barrels, burned them or dumped them in the sea. It wasn't until 2002, yes, 2002, that someone finally escaped. Junko herself, broken and terrified, fled his control and confessed everything to police. When officers raided Matsunaga's last hideout, what they found looked like something out of a horror movie, but worse, because every detail was real. Notes, shock devices, hand-drawn charts documenting obedience levels, and piles of letters where his victims apologised for things they didn't even do. the man had turned brainwashing into a science. And when the trial began, Japan, a country known for its composure, collectively lost its mind. The courtroom was packed with journalists, victims' families, and people who couldn't believe something this monstrous had happened in their own backyard. Matsunaga walked in, calm, smirking, like a man who thought he was too clever to be punished. He blamed Junko for everything, saying she was the one who took things too far. Meanwhile, Junko sat silent, hollow, a living ghost moulded by his manipulation. In 2005, Matsunaga was sentenced to death. Junko got life in prison, but even in his final statements he showed no remorse, just arrogance. He told the court that he did what needed to be done, and that the weak must obey the strong. Chilling words from a man who built his empire of horror on fear, control, and electricity. The most disturbing part of the entire case isn't the violence itself. It's how normal it all seemed at first. Matsunaga wasn't a monster hiding in the shadows. He was a man who smiled, joked, and shook hands. A man you'd never suspect until it was far too late, and that's what makes him terrifying. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it wears a clean suit, a polite smile, and tells you exactly what you want to hear. Even now, years later, the Kitakyushu serial murders remain one of Japan's darkest and least understood crimes. A story of power gone mad, love turned into slavery, and manipulation so deep it rewired people's souls. And at the centre of it all, a man who believed that the world was his to control, one electric shock at a time.